Video game composers, you have to wear a lot of hats. You don't get to just write and arrange music. You also have to mix it, master it, and be the business person with the developer. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more on the mixing side, in particular about sidechaining. So what is sidechaining? Sidechaining is when you use one audio source and it controls another audio source. And usually there's a compressor in the middle that is doing the work to create the effect on the second audio source. It's extremely valuable to game composition. You can create a lot of effects with it. And today I'm going to go through 3 very common examples and applications of sidechaining. And hopefully it helps you understand a little bit better if you're new to it. All right, so here we are in just a very simple little loop I made for this demonstration. Here we have a pad. Very simple loop. Nice pad made by this Moog Mini. Super cool little soft synth. And so that's a nice pad. But if you wanted to create some energy, the most common application, which you've heard a lot of times, is using a kick drum to make that pump. All right, so here I have a kick drum. All right, and what I'm doing is I'm sending it, the kick drum is sent to its own little kick trigger. You have to set these up in Pro Tools, but this is a mono send. I like to do sidechaining usually in mono. All right, and it goes nowhere until I assign where it goes. So here we are. Here's a compressor. This FabFilter Pro C2. It's a very good one for doing sidechaining, and you'll hear ducking right away. See, just hacking up. It's hacking up this pad. I can mute the kick. And right there, we've got energy, we've got motion. Now, it's a very common EDM thing, you know, kicks or snares are always making pads do this. So this is, you know, some well-worn stuff. But how you use it as a game composer, a lot of times you're not making EDM music, but you need energy in it. So here's a little trick. Once you get your pad getting hacked up by the kick drum, you need to mix your dry and your wet. So here's the wet signal. This is the wet is the sidechained pad, and the dry is the non-sidechained pad. Now listen to when you automate between the two. So you can hear it kind of shifting, and that's a cool way to make atmosphere, to have motion and pumping in something that's very simple and ambient. You can still have it pulse subtly, because you're not making hardcore EDM stuff where it's just sucking so much energy constantly and pulsing really aggressively. You can do it in a very subtle way. So if you're curious about how I was able to mute the kick drum and still have the effect, in Pro Tools it's all about pre-fade or post-fade. So when it's set to post, the compressor's not receiving kick drum. It doesn't know, because it's muted. I muted the kick drum. When I unmute it, it hacks. And look how it's variable, because I have different volumes on the kick drum. But whenever I set it up for pre-fade, the volume automation, any volume is not being considered. Now it's hacking everyone aggressively. And I can mute it. So hopefully it gives you a little bit, open your eyes a little bit about different ways you can use sidechaining, not in just the typical EDM way, but how you can use it in a game composition. So that's one example. Okay, so the second example is using the kick drum to help make your bass instruments more clear sounding, and this is also very common. It's a common problem you have in mixing, where you have what's called masking. You get too much low-end information at once, and you need to separate it and make it more clear. So again, we're just sending the kick drum, we're grabbing that same trigger, and now I have a little bass part. It's piano and a synth bass. So here we go. Let me turn the kick drum on. Now, to me, to my ears, the issue, and this is a very subtle thing, but the issue is when the piano hits, the piano has some low end information and it's obfuscating the kick drum. Not the clarity of it because there's high end in the kick drum, but the punch energy, the low end air pushing part of the kick drum is getting a little bit hidden every other bar on the downbeat when the piano hits. So that's what's happening to me. So here I have also the input is the kick trigger that I've created. And here, this is Pro Q4. It's an EQ, but it's still doing it via compression, because the cool thing about Pro Q3 and Pro Q4 is that they do dynamic EQ, which is basically compression in a sonic bandwidth. So here I have it set up on a low shelf. Right here, I'll turn it on. And right here, you'll watch it activate. That's volume compression, only from 96 hertz down on this shelf. And if you have good headphones, you'll hear the pumping. You don't hear kick drum, but you hear low end disappearing on downbeats. And what that does is it makes room for the punch of the kick drum on downbeats. And really, I'm just primarily concerned with the attack of the piano. All right, so you'll see that the way this is set up is it's a low shelf and it's ducking. It's kind of a lot. It's minus 11 dB. So it's pulling out 11 dB of sub information from the bass instruments from 96 hertz and below. So that's what that's doing. And that helps bring clarity right on the downbeat. The kick drum pushes more air. If you have good headphones, or if you have a subwoofer in your studio, you'll hear more punch, just more punch on the attack. And that's what that's doing. It's a very subtle thing, but it helps add clarity to your mix. Okay, so a third way to do this is with a melody. So here, this is a different trigger. This one I'm calling, this one in my setup is called melody trigger. So whenever I have a melody that is playing, but it's getting kind of buried at times, it's not poking through well enough, I can make something like this pad right here disappear a little bit and make room for the melody with a compressor. So here's a pad and this little arpeggiator. So here is another instance of Pro Q4 on the pad. So the arpeggiator is going, and it is the source, all right, the melody trigger, and it's going to control, the arpeggiator is going to cause ducking on the pad. And I'm doing it right here with Pro Q4. This is a very wide mid-range bandwidth, right? And when I turn it on, it's like doing 8 dB reduction, and you'll see that it starts sucking mid-range out of the pad. So that's another example of masking where the melody and the pad are competing for mid-range, but I want the melody to come through a little bit more clearly, so I'm using this wide bandwidth to duck mid-range out of the pad when the melody is louder. So it kind of, they're having to share the same real estate, but they're doing a good job of sharing now because this compressor is kind of forcing the pad out of the way. So hopefully you see that sidechaining is a very powerful tool. It does a lot of work for you. You can kind of automate things very quickly with a compressor. And it's very useful to game composition. Hopefully these 3 applications made a lot of sense, and you can start experimenting with it in your DAWs. Thank you for your time.